Like the kind of the doghouse.
Okay, so this past weekend, Devin Haney defeated Vasiliy Lomanchenko via unanimous decision, with the scorecards reading 116, 112, 115, 113 times 2. And it was a very, very competitive fight. I don't think it was a robbery. I personally scored it a draw the first time scoring it, and looking back, I still think I'm actually the same. I think this was an incredibly close fight. I think this was closer than what Loma's fight with Teofimo was, because Teofimo essentially banked the first 6 rounds and Loma had to kind of come back from that. And a very, I think an entertaining fight. It was not, I wouldn't say a boring fight. I think in the last sort of 10 rounds, 10, 11, 12, Loma really picked up. The 12th, I think he could have done a bit more, but ultimately, I don't think he did enough to really sway the judges. And I won't say it's a robbery. However, I did think towards the end of the fight, if I was going to give a winner, I would have said Lomachenko. However, Haney did well. He did some fantastic work to the body. The straight right's very nice. He wasn't able to impose himself the way I felt he would. In the first sort of few rounds, you could see the size difference, but there wasn't really that same that aggression that I think what Teofimo showed against Lomachenko. Against Teofimo, Lomachenko didn't throw anything meaningful in the first 6, and I think the reason being is he was afraid of the power. Because Haney isn't as powerful, there isn't that fear. You know, Teofimo almost, his opponents look like they've been electrocuted when you hit them, whereas with Haney, you know, we all know the power isn't there. And the problem that I think Haney had at certain points in the fight, he wasn't really landing anything on Lomachenko, which was getting his respect, if you hear what I'm saying. And Lomachenko, I think, performed very well. He belongs, I think, in this 135. I don't think they were saying about going down. I don't think he should. I think he'd done enough work in there. A rematch would be intriguing, and I would like to see that again. However, I would like to see the likes of Shakur Stevenson versus Devin Haney more, and for Loma, you know, there's still some fights out there for him. I would like to see him in Tank. I think he's still involved in the big fight picture, is what I'm saying. Obviously, Ryan Garcia's going up borderline to 140 at the moment, but that's a fight that maybe could be there. I remember it's sort of half being talked about at one point, but there's some fights for Loma, it's my point. Nowhere near, I think, of retiring, even though if he wants to, I don't think he would be people go against it, to be honest. However, what I want to talk about here, so Devin Haney, this was essentially his coming out party. People thought the Kambosos fight was, but really, Kambosos was never at the level that Lomachenko was. And Kambosos also, and I mean this in a polite way, I don't think he really is seen when people were talking about Haney, Teofimo, Tank, Ryan Garcia. He's not on that level. Now, he's a good fighter, but I don't think he's not nowhere near the level of those guys. And Haney showed this because he essentially went up to his home country and just strolled the fight twice. Kambosos just couldn't get near him. And that isn't, Haney's a good fighter, but I don't think it's always to do with Haney. I think it's more to do with also the stylistically. I just think Haney's just a much better fighter than Kambosos. As good as Kambosos, again, has certain qualities, but just not all. And I said this before, the fight that for Undisputed should have been Teofimo and Devin Haney, but because Teofimo obviously moved up in weight and lost to Kambosos, we weren't able to see it. However, I do look at Devin Haney and I do think now, how good is he? Because he is at a point now in his career where 24 years old, he should be, you know, for a champion so young to be undisputed, he really should have the world at his feet. And whilst he certainly feels as if he's got a certain support and a certain legion behind him, it does feel as if Devin Haney, when you compare him to Tank, to Shakur Stevenson, even to Ryan Garcia, it doesn't feel like he has all that hype behind him as maybe it feels like he could. And I feel, you know, there's a question I saw today on Twitter about who is the best fighter at 135. Is it Tank? Is it Lomachenko? Is it Devin Haney? I think Martin was one of them. Was it Ryan Garcia, Shakur. It was all these different fighters, and I said if you base it off on paper, it should be Devin Haney. Based on accomplishments, it should be Lomachenko. On star power, you could say Tank, but I said it. I think overall he's not proved it yet, but I do believe the best out of all of them is Shakur. But again, he has to fight these guys to prove this. But with Haney, it feels as if this fight to me, it answered, I felt, certain questions about him. About, in this level, he was able to show he had some composure and was able to win a big fight. The fact that it was a close fight shows that, Lomachenko's elite. It showed that he's definitely on that level. But there's two things. One was that Devin Haney, and I've said this in my preview, struggles with straight shots. And Lomachenko landed that straight left and that jab time and time again. And for a guy who's essentially supposed to be that sort of out of that Mayweather school of hit and not get hit, it definitely was surprising that he just couldn't really catch on to it. And it makes me wonder if that's if that's just something a little bit like Ryan Garcia. He throws that left hook with his whole hand protecting his face, and he throws it with no regards to what's coming back. And you saw against Tank, he paid for it, and against Loma, Haney in the 11th round looked very, very rough, and he also tired badly in that fight. I mean, I would say badly, to be fair, but he tired in that fight, and he was slowing down. And the problem that you got, and this is the same problem that I said about Luke Campbell and Ryan Garcia, when Campbell knocks Ryan down, yes, Campbell has been an experienced guy, but he's not a big hitter, and he let Ryan off the hook. Tank Davis was not, to my opinion, and to a lot of people, would not have let Ryan off the hook. Lomachenko was pushing Devin Haney, pushing the pace on him, and was not able to take advantage because I think he just isn't his style. His style is to figure you out and then eventually break you down. And this is why I don't think he was able to beat Teofimo, because Teofimo jumped ahead of him, and almost when you're fighting a guy at that level and you essentially allow them to almost gain lead on you, it's very hard to then think that you're going to come back. And it's one reason as well, even different topic completely, why I believe Spence will also beat Crawford, because I believe Crawford's traditionally a slow starter. Spence is a guy who will, because of his activity, will take rounds off you. And this is one thing with Haney where I think he did enough to win the fight. However, he didn't do enough, I think, to really prove himself to everybody, because even though it was a close fight, there is a lot of talk about robbery. That shouldn't be the case. It should be, okay, you won the fight, and now people are seeing you as this potential pound-for-pound king. Lomachenko, he said after the fight that he's a good fighter, but he's not a pound-for-pound fighter. And I think what he meant by this, well, as he pretty much explains it, but he's a good fighter. He's certainly got skills, but he's not up there with the elite. And I think that's my thing with Haney. How good is he? Is he really at the level that is required to beat a Tank? Is he at a level required to beat Shakur Stevenson? Because these guys are undefeated, but let's not get it twisted. You're dealing with two guys. Tank is extremely powerful. He is explosive, has a lot more power. He's fast. He knows how to set traps. Shakur Stevenson is a master at controlling distance. You have to deal with these guys. How do you do? And Shakur is, you look at his interviews, he speaks with so much confidence when he talks about Haney and about how he used to beat Haney. And Haney, I said this before, he's a good fighter, but there's just something that is separating him from the likes of Tank and Shakur and even Ryan Garcia. And I think the athleticism isn't really in his favour. And because I think Haney often does get caught in between styles, he's embraced this being a bit more of a boxer off the back foot recently, but against Linares, he was on the front foot trying to stop him and he couldn't do it. And this is where I say, some fighters, they know what they are. Even if they get called boring, you have to take that style and make it your own. I think, I look at Haney against Shakur, I just think, I don't see how you beat a guy who essentially does what you do, but in my opinion, does it better. And there's another thing, Shakur Stevenson's a southpaw, as is Tank. He seemed like he really struggled against the southpaw Lomachenko. Now, whilst his southpaw Lomachenko is another level, you look at it, the angles are different. He wasn't able to really block that straight left, and it wasn't as if Lomachenko was throwing it really sneakily. He was throwing it very much out in the open, and when you see these type of things, it just makes you wonder how he would fare against the likes of a Tank or Shakur, because I just feel at the moment Haney's kind of at the bottom of the list, even though he has all the belts when it comes to these guys. And I don't think it was a robbery, but I certainly think that we saw questions. I have almost more questions than answers about Devin Haney now. I probably have the same amount, to be honest, because I don't really look at Haney and I think he's a great boxer, but he can be hit, and he hasn't really got the power. So there's a bit in between. It feels as if he's just missing something here, and I don't know what I would particularly say it is. Bill Haney, for example, was talking about how it wasn't close after the fight, how Haney won it, but it was so close. And I'm not saying you should dog walk a guy like Lomachenko, but Teofimo, you could see Lomachenko was scared of his power. With a guy like Tank, I think Lomachenko would be the same thing. I think he'd be afraid of Tank's power. Against Shakur Stevenson, I think Shakur would be too quick for him, and I think Lomachenko would get outworked. There's these little gifts that all these guys have. And I think the thing with Haney that we talk about is a fantastic jab, but that jab wasn't really that effective. It was more the body work in this fight that really was effective. And Haney did an excellent job of slowing Lomachenko down from that. But again, I don't feel as if there wasn't a point in this fight for, okay, Haney's taking control. It was very much a back and forth, ebb and flow type of fight. And I don't know really how Haney beats these guys. Tank, he could have a chance because he does make mistakes, Tank, and supposedly he's sparring, Haney got the better of him, but I just don't see Haney not getting hit is the problem with Tank. And even with that, Tank is very economical. He picks his shots wisely, and I don't think we'll see that fight for a while anyway, to be honest. But next fight, I would definitely like to see Haney against Shakur, though. I think it'd be the fight to make. I think both guys, both young, and they both fight very similar. I would love to see the fight. I'm not saying Haney won't beat these guys or can't, but I just don't see it at the moment. I don't see enough there with Haney where I think he is at the elite level. I think there's still some learning to do, and I still think that there is a vulnerability to him, which I believe will cost him against these likes of a Tank and a Shakur. And you go up in weight even against a Teofimo. That's why I always wanted to see him, and I need to see Haney against a power puncher. That's one thing in his career yet we have not seen. We haven't seen him against the guy. We've seen him against a guy with fast hands like Kambosos, a technical boxer like Lomachenko. We've seen him against an old guy who can take punishment in Linares, but we haven't seen him against a guy who has that ability to put you to sleep with one shot. And I think with Devin Haney, I just want to see how he handles that. If he can handle that and go through it, then fair enough. And then maybe I have a question that can be answered. But I have questions of how he does against a guy who pushes the pace against him, against a southpaw who's a bit younger, a bit more spry, who's also similar size to him. How does he do against a guy who has knockout power? There's a lot of questions, but I will say I don't think it was a robbery, though. I think it was a good fight, but I just think still with Devin Haney, there's some questions I need to see answered. But no doubt he's definitely proven certain things. He's a fighter who will go to a fighter's backyard. He's been hurt now a few times. We saw against Linares, we saw it. Jojo Diaz pushed it on me a little bit, and we saw it now against Lomachenko. Lomachenko had Haney in a lot of trouble in the 11th round, and honestly, I thought Haney's legs didn't look steady at one point. There's just a lot I think that Lomachenko did, and Lomachenko performed amazing in that 11th. If he had done 11 all the way through the fight, or I was at least able to keep at that same level, he probably would have beaten Haney maybe quite easily. Not easily, but comfortably, I would say, because Haney, you could see once Lomachenko, and I said this again in my preview, Haney struggles when guys throw 3-4 punch combinations against him. It's as if he almost becomes unstuck. He doesn't know what to do. So what does he do? He naturally just holds them. He doesn't know how to negate the combinations. Some guys, you see Floyd would often do a thing where guys would throw a 3-4 punch. He would just lean back against the ropes. You see some guys are able to sort of keep their distance. Haney doesn't know what to do, so he often gets hit and he just clinches straight away. And And it's not like a smart clinch when a guy holds on and they do the smart thing. It's a little bit reckless to a point where if a fighter could recognize what you were doing in time with an uppercut, you would possibly get knocked out or knocked down. And again, Haney, I do think he's a very good fighter. He has a lot of skill. I think his jab's fantastic, one of the best jabs in boxing. But there's just, again, I just feel there needs to be more from Haney until I can say that I would be comfortable in saying he beats a Tank or a Shakur Stevenson, because those guys have certain fundamentals. Yes, Shakur's never really been hurt in a fight, and even Tank, he's been hurt here and there, but not badly. But sometimes that can be a good thing because it shows that you can absorb punishment and take it, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it shows that, yes, you were able to absorb punishment and this guy wasn't, but that means that guy could punish you. Ryan Garcia got knocked down against Luke Campbell. Tank has never hit the floor, and yet you could argue in that fight that might serve Ryan in a good way, but it didn't. We saw it. As soon as Ryan got dropped by Tank, he essentially went into his shell a little bit, At this level, at this weight, I think if you see a guy who's vulnerable, it just doesn't make for good reading, especially with somebody explosive and quick guys in this 135 division. I look at someone like Teofimo. What would he have done with Devin Haney when he was fighting at 135? A guy who was explosive as he was, A good fighter, Devin Haney, but I don't think he's a great fighter yet, and I don't think personally I'd put him quite up there for pound. However, resume-wise, beating Kambosos, beating Linares, beating Lomachenko, he's slowly building a very, very good resume. I just think in terms of the boxing and skill department, from my own point of view, I just need to see more from him. But no doubt a very good fighter, and he fought very well in the fight. Again, his body weight was good. Beat a legend in Lomachenko, so you've got to give him respect for that. And a very good fighter, but I just have to see how he handles. At this moment in time, I have doubts whether he would beat a Shakur Stevenson, a Tank Davis, a Lomachenko in rematch. Even then, I may have doubts, So, yeah, there are certain, I think, adjustments Hay needs to make. I'm sure he'll make them, but as of yet, I'm still a little bit unconvinced to see how he does against those guys. But no doubt, like I said, he's got the belts. He has the best resume, I think, out of all of them. So a lot of things go for him. I just think when they match up, styles make fights, and I just wonder how he would handle against those guys. But regardless, a good win from Devin Haney in a very, very good fight. A chess match, but in a very exciting chess match, which is not what you often see in boxing. And to me, Devin Shakur's the next fight, and for Loma, there's a few fights out there for him still. Him and Tank I would like to see next, to be honest. I don't think it will happen, but it's been rumoured for so long. We remember Floyd didn't really want Tank messing with Loma, where he was a bit earlier in his career. But now, Tank's 28. I think it's time we started seeing more of these fights against these more elite guys. And I think Tank and Loma would be such an interesting fight, especially when you consider that Loma showed that he's still got it at his age at 35, I think he is now. So yeah, incredible fight. And yeah, both incredible fighters. Tank, Haney, Loma, a great fight. And there's a lot going in this division still, and I think it's the best division in boxing, this 135-pound division. And I do believe that we got some big fights in the future. You got Haney, Loma, Tank, you got Shakur Stevenson, Ryan Garcia. A very, very exciting division. So yeah, just my thoughts on Haney, Loma, and yeah, until next time.